webinar today. Especially thank you for all the alumni who have tuned in today. Today's topic is dealing with uncertainty in today's business context. Our guests today are Simon Stöpfgeshoff. He's Director of Corporate Programs at our Custom Programs team. He will be joined by Kaisa Ranta-aho, who will join from Finland. She's with Orion Pharma, and she will tell us her first-hand experience of her leadership journey to India. So now, welcome to Simon. Thank you very much for taking the time. I wish you an insightful lunch break, and I'm looking forward to your questions.
Good. So welcome, dear HSG alumni. It's good to have you here. We want to share a few insights that we gained around the topic of leading in uncertain times. And I'm glad that we have Kaisa with us for a few questions and answers at a later stage to provide us some first-hand experiences on how she dealt with the uncertainty in the Indian context. So let us just briefly look at what we've prepared. First of all, a very brief introduction around the topic of leading uncertainty. We will then introduce to you what we actually did in India with a bunch of Finnish executives. And then we want to derive a few learnings from that together with Kaisa. And in the end, we want to share a few concrete takeaways for all of you that you can actually transfer and reflect upon. So let us go on. So I'm sure you know the term, the VUCA world. So we live in the VUCA world. It's becoming volatile and uncertain and complex and ambiguous. And I'm sure that most of you in the companies that you work in have had your share of VUCA. And of course, we have done research into these topics, how actually organizations need to adjust and cope with this higher stress level that is generated by a VUCA world. And also on the very personal level, what does a VUCA world, the uncertainty actually do to you as a leader, and how do you deal with that? And we want to look particularly at the topic of uncertainty. Uncertainty is simply the lack that you can predict things nowadays. And I think just looking at the news these days, there's plenty of examples ranging from Brexit, of course, where we don't really know, even though the negotiations should be closed in another 3 weeks. Many companies in the UK and also in Europe, of course, they simply don't know what is going to happen. So it's become very unpredictable. Another example, of course, is the ongoing trade war. Will that worsen? Will that get better? What is the impact on companies in Europe? And last but not least, of course, technology is a big topic. For example, the automation is going on. How does that impact jobs? How does that impact the organizational structures? What is going to be automated? So there's lots of things out there where companies at this point in time simply do not know if something is going to happen and what is going to happen, and even worse, how it is going to impact them. So the times are very uncertain, to say the least. And I'm sure you have experienced that yourself. And of course, as I said, it can be perceived as very stressful for individuals because you as leaders, because most of you, I suppose, are in leadership situations, you will still have to make decisions. People will look to leaders, for clarity and for decision making. And yet it has become so difficult in uncertain times. So we invite you at this point to hear from you. We have prepared a quick poll. And the question here is simply, compared to the past, how prepared do you feel today to lead your organization in the future that is less and less predictable? So we want to hear from you. If you compare it back to 5, 10, 15 years, how well do you feel prepared to deal with these uncertain things? The technology, the automation, the Brexit, etc. What does it do with you, and how well do you feel prepared? So let's just wait a few seconds to look at the results. Yeah, we have like yeah, almost 60% now. And what we're seeing is well prepared, 49%, not prepared, 51%. So it seems like 1 out of 2 out of the audience today is like, I'm not really so well prepared to deal with that level of uncertainty. So it is, you know, as such, it is, I think, a challenge that most of us, or in this case, half of you actually face as you lead and work in the business world. So thank you for this participation in the quick poll. So what we want to do is, as I said, we want to share some insights and some learnings we gained when we went to India about 1.5 years ago, having about 20 Finnish pharma executives work on a business model in very uncertain conditions. Now you might want to ask, why India? And we felt that India, and for those of you who have been in India, actually, it's highly VUCA. India is VUCA times 3, and we felt it's a good place to practice and to experience the leadership uncertainty. So we went to Udaipur, which is about it's about an hour flight southwest of New Delhi, and we took, as I said, the executives to that place. And what did we set up for them? We have a few students who actually founded a water shop, and they were master thesis on this topic. And what is this water shop about? So it's basically, the basic idea is that they pull water out of the ground, they purify it, and they have a delivery mechanism and a supply chain behind, and they deliver it to the population in rural India. So as such, it's a very simple business model, you might say, but given the environment in India, which is so uncertain, which is so chaotic, etc., it's of course a major challenge for them, for our 3 students who founded this water shop, and thus also, of course, for the executives that we took there. And the thing is, they made it work. They have one water shop at this, or they had one water shop at that point in time that was actually generating revenue and profit. And they want now to scale this business model to up to 25 water shops. And that was part of the assignment that we gave to the executives. So here, again, you would simply say it's a very simple value chain, if you like, that they get the water out of the ground, they purify it, and they put it in canisters, and then they have a supply chain, and they have trucks, etc., who deliver actually the purified water to the population in rural India. And it's if you look at the pictures here, it's very simple. But again, doing this in India is not simple. That you have to deal with a whole lot of uncertainties with the authorities, with the consumers, with the supply chain, with the technology, etc. So of course, by our standards, the business model like that, it seems to be very simple. But if you want to run this business model in India and scale it and make a real big business case out of it, it's a different animal, definitely. And so we took, these 20 pharma executives to India. And this was on the first night, and you might simply see from the body language that, yes, they were very uncertain. They didn't really know what to expect. Of course, we had briefed them a little bit on the water shop concept and also on the assignment that they were getting. But all in all, they didn't really know what was going to happen. And they were very uncertain, and they're very anxious and curious, of course. And it was the way it was meant to be in this case. Good. So the assignment actually then was very concrete. It was a very clear business case that we gave them, was to develop the business model and also to think about how you would lead this, the implication for leadership. If you want to go from just one water shop to 25 water shops in 2 or 3 years. That was the assignment. And we told the participants they got a driver, they got a car, And we basically told them on Monday morning, you got all the resources it needs, the drivers, etc. Come back in 2 days and come back with a concept around how do you want to lead this, this scaling up of the business model. So that in simple terms was the assignment. We didn't really give any further briefings. We basically threw them into the cold water. And believe me, the water was very cold for some of them. And yeah, at this point, I'm very pleased to have Kaisa with us on the call. Hello, Kaisa. She can hear us. Ah, Kaisa, can you hear us?
Hello, hi, here's from sunny Finland.
Yeah, it's good to have you here, Kaisa, with us to share a few of your personal insights of this adventure. So Kaisa was a participant in this, and she went through this, and she's an HR director in with the company. The company is called Orion. It's a Finnish pharma company, and she will share a few of her insights around how did she perceive this uncertainty. How did the team go about developing the business model? So thanks again, Kaisa, for having you on the webinar. To start with, Kaisa, can you say just a few words on your company, on Orion, so our audience understands where you're coming from?
Yes, okay. Orion is a very Finnish company. We're working in 28 countries, but still the headquarters are in Espoo, Finland. We're 35,000 employees, and pharmaceutical products and services are our main thing what we're working on, and we're about to go more global in the near future, but very much like Finland and Europe based at the moment.
Okay, thank you. So tell us, what were your feelings at the start of this adventure when you got to India and we gave you this assignment?
Yes, they were excited but very nervous. We had absolutely no clue what we were jumping into. So nervous excitement.
Yeah. Okay. And how did you start then? How did you go about? In the very first morning, on Monday morning, when we told you, split up in teams, go work on this business case. How did you go about this?
Okay, first you have to think we came from a very different background. We're from a very stable economy, and our business is very predictable. We come from the Northern European value base, so landing in Udaipur, where the infra and everything is very chaotic, very kind of VUCA, it was quite an experience. It was in a way it was exciting, but it was nerve-wracking to see that nothing that we're used to from the past would be liable here.
Okay. And then how did you actually start in your teams to work on this assignment? What did you do? Can you share a few of the actions you took early on?
Yes. Of course, the team was about 5 members. We had experts from different areas. We had the sales person, we had the finance expert, we had a production a project manager and everything. So the team was a very kind of expert team, but we had very little time, and we had a very challenging task to give suggestions for these students of Ivana Vitality for, in the next 24 hours. So what we needed to do is we dealt the task and try to, rely on that we can do it, to put our heads together and really make intensive teamwork.
Were there tensions in the team?
Sorry?
Were there tensions in the team early on?
Well, actually the nervousness, of course, a new task, new surroundings, really we could not lean on anything we were used to in the past. So we had to kind of throw ourselves into the process and trust that we can do this. So that made us a little bit nervous in some tensions, of course, but we didn't really have so much time for, feelings. We just had to go forward.
Yeah, so it was a high pressure environment. Yeah, and how did you start then? I mean, I suppose it was overwhelming because you didn't really know where to start in terms of getting meaningful information. Share a little bit, what did you actually do to tackle this assignment?
Yes, we realized quite early on that we wouldn't find any truth or any answers in, the traditional methods, no Excel sheets or charts or KPIs or such. We had to, put ourselves into actually going forward and meeting the people at the water shop. That was where we could find bits and pieces of information. And we dealt our tasks so that, all of the different experts would tackle a different area. For me, of course, the natural way forward was to try to find information regarding people issues, regarding the organization, regarding management style, regarding learning, were instructions visible, and so on and so forth. So we really kind of, went on and gathered information on the field by doing research and tried to fit the pieces together to find some kind of understanding of where the potential is.
And how did you make sure that you knew what to ask for in this environment that was so uncertain and complex?
Well, we really didn't. So we didn't know what to ask for at first, but little by little, with being humble and going out and asking questions and seeing and hearing and taking pictures, we started to form a picture. And after we have formed the picture, we then kind of tried to fit the pieces together so that we would understand where the strengths are, where the bottlenecks are, and what to actually suggest for the owners of.
And what was there any turning point in the work process over the 2 days? Was there a moment where you said, this is really where we got to it?
Yeah, I think, at first we just had a lot of information, but what would be valuable, that was the clue, and, how to fit them all together. There were some really good successful moments when we realized that, for example, that, the role of the water shop manager was a bit fuzzy, that made a real, a little bit, that was blocking the development of the whole business, just to give you an example, or that the owners of the company were quite, far out. They weren't present. They weren't really understanding the operative model and how it works. That was some really important finding that we actually added in the report. And the turning point was actually just to kind of collect all the information we had from the field research.
Okay. And then how did you get from collecting that information? Can you describe what happened between collecting the information and then making sense of it and coming to some strategic decisions on how to grow the business model?
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of insights we gained during the days and during, staying at the water shop. Let's say one little small example, but just to show and tell you about the difference between, being in the office and staring at a computer and then being at the water shop, was that we're thinking about, how, the working hours and how loyal the employees are to the company. And then we actually saw this one man, an elderly employee there at the company, who he worked long shifts, he worked a long day, and after working all day at the water shop, he actually took out a mattress and laid it underneath the office table of the water shop. So he slept there. So he was giving his whole heart and life to the company 24/7. And that's just an example of some piece of information which we would never have realized or seen if not, going to the water shop. And such stories and such pieces we then put together to form a big picture of, what the situation is at the moment. Okay.
So looking back, what do you think were the key success factors to get you to, a solution at the end of 2 days?
key success factors definitely were to, go out there, as mentioned, go out to the water shop, to ask questions, to be really humble, not think you really know anything before you go there. So forgetting your old assumptions and the kind of the past history you have, and looking at things with bright new eyes. That's definitely one thing. Then another thing is to be bold. I mean, just sticking to your comfort zone and to what you're used to and what's kind of well known to you won't get you further. So just kind of being bold and courageous and jumping to the unknown. I think that's one definitely.
Okay. A few words on how you could use this going back to Finland in your job?
Well, I think that all of us who had this experience will never think the same, because this was a really kind of mind-blowing experience. And first of all, I think the level of learning, quadrupled. It took us to a whole new level of experience. This is how you learn. I think we're, for example, at the moment having very big organizational changes in Orion at the moment. And of course, in big changes, the end result is always unknown. So it has given us and me especially very much confidence in, whatever, may be with an unknown end result, it's fine. I mean, I know I have the tools now to get there. I have the confidence in going out there, asking questions and building the pieces for a successful.
Good. Thank you. Thank you, Kaisa. We'll have Kaisa around for Q&A at the end. But thanks for now for your insights. And I'd like just to summarize what she said. So the experience and lessons learned. One thing she said, you need to go out there to collect the information. Don't just stay, at your office and analyze Excel sheets. So the first-hand information was really critical in this case, in this uncertain environment. And then, of course, she mentioned the teamwork to say, you need multiple perspectives from different members of the team, and this is exactly what happened in these 2 days. Very intensive teamwork to make it work. And of course, if you look at this from a higher level, the challenge is in uncertain times how you go. If you look at this picture from left to right, meaning there's tons of information, there's an overload of information, and how do you get from that overload of information to a leadership strategy and to a leadership decision? So one learning is you have to be much more conscious around which information do you need, where do you collect it, turn it into knowledge, turn it into insights, and eventually turn it into good decisions. So that's the decision-making process, and the information you need is much more critical, and that's something we learned from the participants. So at this point, we invite you for another quick poll, because we want to understand from you if you always know how and where to access information in these uncertain times. Are you clear around where to get the information you will need? Okay, we're at 40% going up. Thank you for your participation. We're almost at 60%. So what I read here is that mostly, 20% say seldom. So we have like 80% mostly, 20% seldom. So my interpretation is, mostly but you might not be totally certain where to get the information you need to make good strategic decisions in uncertain times. Thank you again for the participation in the poll. Now, we put a framework around this, and this is based on the work from our colleague, Professor Roger Moser, about strategic decision making or decision intelligence in uncertain time. And basically what the framework suggests is that to start with the immediate intelligent mindset, you need to have awareness in the company that getting the right information and also knowing what you don't know is a mindset question. The second step, then, the second element, framework proficiency, means, can you actually master these frameworks, and can you make sure that you have multiple perspectives and multiple information sources in any given situation, then of course you need to access the information. So companies nowadays need to rethink the way they get the information into the company. They need to reach out a lot more out there. And the classical research, market research reports might not be sufficient any longer. And of course, the decision proficiency means you have to turn this information into decisions. So this is a framework that can be used and applied, and it sort of summarizes also what we believe is a useful approach in uncertain times to still make good decisions, which is eventually what you want. So a few takeaways from this journey that Kaisa described. One of the takeaways clearly battle for curiosity. You need to stay curious and ask questions. That's definitely something you need to do. Many companies, I think, need to, as I said, rethink where do they source the data and information. And you might have to reach out much more externally also to sources left and right that you haven't tapped in the past. Be much more flexible around that. This is something that Kaisa mentioned, diversity of thought, meaning you need to look at, in any given decision situation, you need to get information from many, many different angles and perspectives. You might have heard the term the red teamers. So those are the people on the team who ask the uncomfortable questions, who challenge you, who challenge sort of the traditional mental models. So make sure you have those red teamers who ask the uncomfortable questions. And of course, you shouldn't rely on what you've seen in the past and what you've witnessed in the past. And Kaisa made it very clear they couldn't rely. They had no reference whatsoever from past experience. So they completely had to leave that behind to move forward. Then, of course, this is a tough one to simplify the information because you have so much information and you have to cut through to the substance. And last but not least, you should also look for information that makes you feel uncomfortable. So don't just look for information that confirms what you think you already know or what has worked in the past, but you need to be able to go one step further and also, accept and take in information that does not necessarily meet your mental models and your expectations. So these are a few of the concrete takeaways for dealing with these higher levels of uncertainty if you want to stay effective and if you want to still make good decisions, good strategic decisions. Good. I'm conscious of the time, and I think at this point we invite you to ask us any questions. You can provide those via the tool. And
so, thank you, Simon. Thank you, Kaisa. Yeah, there's one question to start with, and all of you, feel free to send us your questions, and you can send your questions to Kaisa and Simon, of course. So, one to start with, how sustainable is the project for the local people? Maybe for you.
That's an interesting question. It is sustainable. The 3 students are still, they took in the sort of advice that they got from the executives, and they now they have 3 water shops, and they will continue to grow, and they actually have a committed fund, a significant committed fund to build over the next 3 years to continue to build more water shops. So it is sustainable.
Wonderful. Next question. Your model seems very cognitive. I would argue that dealing with uncertainty, you need also to tap your intuition. What are your thoughts on that?
That's a fair question. And I think research shows that we should not neglect intuition to decision making, and that there are many instances, in fact, where intuition still is a good basis for good decisions. So the answer is yes, it is cognitive, and in this case, it was based on getting the right information in India. But research shows you should also allow intuition. Good point.
How to ask uncomfortable questions in hierarchical-driven organizations? Do you have any insights on that?
Courage. I think it takes courage. I mentioned the term the red teamer. You could call him a devil's advocate. I don't care, but it takes courage to ask those questions to senior management. So I think it has a lot to do with confidence and courage to ask those questions.
Okay, I'll just read them top down, basically. Why has leadership not been listed in the key takeaways? How to lead people in uncertainty? Coming back to our initial question, really. Okay,
well, in this case, we really focused on one, if you like, one aspect of leadership, which is it's decision-making, information processing. So we could have gone into other areas such as motivation, etc., but simply for reasons of time, also we need to make a choice here around the outcomes. But there's multiple perspectives also here that you can apply to the question. Fair question.
And here's maybe a question for Kaisa or you.
Kaisa.
Do you plan this project in other countries too? Or have you learned everything you can in India?
Well, yeah, the answer is yes. We might run it again with Kaisa's colleagues, so we might have a second group. And yes, the feedback for us, as the ones who organized this journey, was very encouraging, and we do plan to go more frequently to exotic places because we felt that it has a real impact on the learning, the deepness of the learning of our participants.
Definitely so.
Thank you. So I'm just scrolling through the questions. What measures do you recommend to implement or institutionalize? Sorry, the question just flipped somewhere else because someone has upvoted it. I suppose it's gone now. I'm sorry. Where is it? It's really gone.
Well, apologies.
Oh, there we are. I'm sorry. What measures do you recommend to implement or institutionalize out-of-the-box thinking or dealing with the VUCA world within an organization?
Well, as I said, I think the one thing is you have to be much more open, and you need to find new alternative data sources. Let's just take an example. If you think about automation and the impact of jobs, which is a topic for most companies, which is something companies don't know, how will it impact our job landscape? So you will have to speak to maybe labor market experts, to automation experts. You will speak maybe to headhunters. You should speak to a whole range of data sources, or get information from a whole range of data sources. Go to conferences that you maybe have not attended in the past. Yeah. So it might seem a little bit uncomfortable because it's unstructured, but our experience is it will pay off.
So some questions around the change and the management in the organization. First one actually voted to the top. How to deal with senior management when only profit drive the decision and uncertainty makes them less open?
Kaisa, would you, based on this experience, answer that question?
Yeah, sorry, the connection is not very good at the moment. Could you please repeat the question?
How to deal with senior management when only profit drives their decision and uncertainty makes them less open? Not that you would know.
The thing is to look forward, and we are facing a more uncertain, complex times, and if we're not prepared for that, we're out of the business. So it's profit, yes, but it's also having the ability to learn and to renew oneself. So I think that's in the core of what we have to face. Also the senior management. It goes for the senior management as well.
There's another question. How to generate awareness, the first step in the model of Professor Moser. Could you give some examples?
Yeah, I think it's like with any other change process, you need to create some urgency around this. In the bad case, you're doing this out of a crisis situation. In a better case, you are in a comfortable situation, such as with Orion. So you need to create that sense of urgency, and then of course you need, I think, also people. It comes down to recruitment and to hiring people who bring in new, complementary, crazy information and knowledge. And give them the space, I think, in their organization, enable them to drive these processes around, hey, things are changing and we need new information, we need new perspectives. So those are just a few examples what I would recommend.
So just a small remark from Mr. Littergerber. By the way, watching this from the taxi and traffic in India.
Yeah.
So
Wonderful.
I'm glad.
So he knows.
Working.
Yeah.
And another question, of course, there is some more to answer. How to support a company with culture change, to develop a company culture towards a more flexible mindset? So it's a more general question.
Yeah, that's a tough one, I think. Again, it comes down to, as always, you need, I think, top management awareness. It starts at the top. And in many cases, or many companies that we have worked with, many of these processes are actually driven out of those who are responsible for innovation or business development, because very often that's the sort of entry point for creating more awareness. It's the people who think out of the box, who do new projects, new products, who explore for the company. I think you need to leverage those resources that you have in a company.
Here's a technical question, maybe also for you, Kaisa. To which extent has the business model of the Indian water company been changed by the group compared to what it was before?
Kaisa, you presented to our students.
Yeah, what I've heard from them up till now, that they have really grown. So they have taken our advice very seriously, and what I've understood, that they have actually grown from 3. I'm not sure of the number of expansion, but I mean the width of expansion. But they have really, been growing their business a lot since the 3.
Thank you. Are there other methods, tools, other than the real situation, because not everyone can do this, right, that we can use to address VUCA in the daily business situation?
Yeah, what we've also done and what we've recommended to companies is to, for example, to set seasoned, older senior managers, the baby boomers, to set them up with students. We have actually practiced, or we have put that into practice in some of our programs, to have really that confrontation of the old thinking of the baby boomer generation, and really confront that with students, some of our students, and have them work on the same challenges, and then debrief around the learnings and how both groups actually address that. So I think it has a lot to do with confront yourself with different perspectives.
Thank you. In times of VUCA, we all need to deal with constant changes. This requires very agile business models in our companies. What are your experiences around agile business models? Do you have any insights?
Yeah, I think related to this topic, Agile is a good example, such as design thinking, where you go very fast and you test very quickly. Because things change very quickly, and you're constantly prepared for something unknown that is going to happen. May that be a consumer or a customer feedback. So I think the whole agile thinking reflects very well that need to deal with the uncertainty. So more and more companies, I think, in the meantime, use it beyond just the original IT area where it was applied originally.
And then there are quite a few questions around the topic of intuition. What role does it play? Should you only rely on models? Or
as always, I think you need both. I think any CEO or any strategic planner in a company who would rely only on intuition, I think he would probably lose his job and his credibility. So I think there is still reliance on hard data and information. But of course, on an individual level, again, I think the intuition will always come into play, and you should also allow for it to come into play. So answers, I think it needs to be a balance.
Okay, I think we may have time for a couple more questions. What suggestions do you have for change managers, HR managers, culture managers to enforce curiosity and decision-making without knowing all facts and thus coping with failure? Maybe a question for you, Kaisa, as that's your role.
Yes, we actually learned during this program that failure is a good thing. That's something to be celebrated. So if you don't fail and then learn from failure, you're again risking your whole business, because hiding facts and hiding the truth is nothing that that we really are aiming for. So to fail once, to learn from it, and go further. That's what I think is something to look into and aim for.
Good. Maybe last question. Sorry, it takes a lot of scrolling through the answers. Are you using approaches like systems thinking to work on the mental model of managers? Is that something you already do in your work?
I personally have not done it. I have colleagues, or we have colleagues at the university who have used it. But I will honestly say that we haven't used it in for a project like this. But it's a good idea. So whoever posed the question, that's a good idea. Yeah.
Okay, so I think our time is up.
Good.
Thank you very much, Kaisa. Thank you very much, Simon. Thank you mostly to all you viewers who have stayed online and who have asked questions and really discussed with us. So as I said, you will receive the link to the recording. You will get the link to the slides. And the next webinar will be on November 20th. So there's a bit of a fall break in between. And that will be on the topic of world market leaders and what we can learn from them. So I hope to see you again next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kaisa.
Thank you.